Hi, Mr. Writers. Today I thought I'd talk a little bit about wrestling your story after you finish the first draft. Um, and came to mind because I wrote a short story and it's been sitting on the sidelines for a little over a week, which is going to give me fresh eyes when I look at it. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the editing, rewriting process after you finish your first draft. That second draft, this is what you're going to be working on now, it's all about smoothing out all the bumps in your first draft. Um, your first draft drew on your creativity, uh, creating a story that readers will like and bringing those characters to life. And the second draft examines your writing and it fills in missing elements and serves to improve your story and your writing craft. So, in the second draft, you bring in the heavy equipment to build a smooth road for your reader. That's what the second draft is all about. You are switching your head to editing mode and examining your story for any bumps or glitches. And these bumps are anything that brings the reader out of the story. It can be questioning how a character got from one place to another. It can be a clunky sentence. It's anything that can stop your reader. So you want your plot to make sense and your syntax to flow. Both of those things. And you want your character roles to fit the story. So gear this editing process toward creating a smooth read. That's what this first edit is all about. So, how do you go about doing this? I definitely suggest starting with a print copy. Get it out on paper so you can mark it up. Um, some writers use different colored pens for different types of editing. Uh, um, my preference is to hold the pages together somehow. For this short story, I just used a stapler, and for longer full-length novel manuscripts, I actually take it to the local printer like Kinko's and get a spiral binding, and that way all the pages stay together. So if you accidentally drop the manuscript and the pages won't go flying all over. Um, Some authors put the manuscript away for several days or weeks. I just mentioned it's been about 10 days since I finished this. And the reason to do that is you actually bring fresh eyes to your story as you read. And you're reading not as a writer, but as a reader. And your goal is to spot the places that will bring your reader up short or make them question what's going on in the story. And you're going to read the entire manuscript and you're going to mark your edits somehow, however you develop the system um, on the page. So, one of the things I suggest is that you print it in manuscript format and it's double spaced with margins so you have room to write between the lines. Okay, so that's kind of the general logistics of it. So you're all ready to edit. Now, what do you look for? Um, the second draft helps you decide what to rewrite and whether the story organization stands or needs improvement. So here are some things to look for when you're reading. Find the best replacement for any placeholder words. I know I mentioned before, when you're writing, if the right word doesn't come to your mind, that you just put a placeholder. I use um, quadruple X's. You can use whatever you want, but you want to go through and make sure that, and now spend the time to determine what the right word is for all those placeholder words. Um, Also, you want to fill in any missing details from research. Like if you want more details, say, about a weapon, now is the time where you can go and get those details and add them to your story. Um, and you want to discover plot holes where your story jumps from one place to another without any exposition, any transition that brings your reader along from the last point to this current point where it feels like it jumps. Okay. Um, this is a time when you can reorder scenes. You may feel that a certain scene needs to come earlier in your story, or maybe it needs to go a little bit later in the story. So this is the time where you can do that reorganization scene by scene. Then you can watch and trim your character count by combining two or more minor characters into one. Um, so your reader won't be confused by all the characters. And then you want to rewrite any clunky sentences and rearrange paragraphs in the same way that you rearrange scenes. You may feel that a paragraph needs to come earlier or later in your scene. Um, so you're rearranging your paragraphs, you're rearranging your scenes, and you may want to take a look at the characters and look at who's important and whether you've spent too much detail on a minor character. So you may want to take some of that out for minor characters. You want to make sure that any subplots that you've created in your mystery are closed. You don't want to leave your reader hanging. Whatever happened with Jim and Arnie and that fight they had, so you want to make sure that any subplots are closed before the final reveal of your story. And I've talked about that before. The final reveal, as far as mystery readers are concerned, is the end. So you want to make sure that you tie up all those subplots before you get to the final reveal. Um, um, And this is a good time to look at those subplots and make sure they actually support and further your main story, your mystery. All right. Um, Essentially, your goal is to find places that need work and create a smooth read for your reader. And that's why reading the story as a reader helps you find the places that raise questions, and it really does help to just put the story aside for a while. So when you approach it, it's like you, as a reader, reading the story. Uh, for instance, a sequence may have made sense when you were writing the story, but now it seems like it's either misplaced where it appears in the story, or it may need some more work. So as you reread, look at what isn't happening as well as what is happening, because if something isn't happening and it raises questions for the reader, you may need to fill in some transition. Sometimes it's only a sentence. Um, so always check for redundant information. You don't want to say the same thing over again. It's hard to remember what's redundant when you're writing because it takes a long time to write your story. Um, so you want to check, because as you read, it's going to be faster than while you were writing, and you may see that, wait, I already said that. And then you can take out that second instance. Or you may decide, this is what editing is all about, that you want to take out the first instance and save that bit of information or description for later in the story. Um, the other thing that I want to suggest is that you suspend judgment. You don't need to be critical. You just, how can I say this? Your mindset is all about making the story smooth. It's not about berating yourself for doing the things that you want to change. Um, as you read the story and you find those weak points, uh, don't judge yourself as a writer. Just fix it, you know, because the whole idea here is not to berate yourself. The whole idea is to make the story better, smoother read for your reader. That's what you're doing. No writer creates a perfect first draft. And the purpose of the second draft is to spot the places where you can improve your story. That's it. That's all you're doing. You are improving the big picture. All right. This edit focuses on story balance and how the story flows, and the character rules, and whether you're raising the stakes and heightening the story tension, and if each scene makes sense and where it fits in your story, and if subplots support the main story, and you're asking and looking for a way for how the reader responds to your story. That's what this editing pass is all about. It's like, how is the reader going to respond to the story? Um, so I guess basically there's two parts to this second draft. One is going through and identifying all the spots where you want to make changes, filling in the right words, filling in research details, making sure that you don't have too many characters, making sure that the scene sequence makes sense and heightens the suspense, so that you have your scenes in the right places. All the things that make the story flow. Once you've identified those weak points, then the second part of this editing is rewriting, adding that perfect word, making sure the scene is in the right place, making sure your characters fit the story and work well in the story. Um, It could be shortening descriptive passages or combining minor characters into one character or adding story events to eliminate plot holes. Whatever it is, whatever those little glitches you find in your story, this is where you do the rewriting um, to make the story flow. So, I know for some beginning writers, especially, and like, well, I finished the manuscript. Why don't I just send it to an editor and have them point out all that stuff? Well, one, it's going to be more expensive. The more at work your editor has to do, um, the more it's going to cost you. But putting that financial expense aside, it's your story, and the more you work to make your story flow, the better the story is going to be for your editor. They won't have as many questions. They can help you identify the places that even you overlooked, and that's what the editors. That's how the editor helps you. So you want to make sure that you do this first wrestling of your manuscript before you send it off to an editor. Okay, I hope that helps. That job of that first editing is really to make the story flow for your reader. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments below and keep writing, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.